Welcome to From Bench to Bedside, a podcast where science meets real-world medicine and complex health topics are explained with clarity, context, and evidence. Before we begin, a quick reminder. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Every individual's health situation is different, so for personal medical questions, please consult your own healthcare provider. With that said, let's get started. So we're having fun with this. So
yes.
Welcome to Bench to Bedside podcast. My name is Dr. Zachary Rubin. I'm a double board certified pediatrician and allergist immunologist.
My name is Dr. Melanie Matthew. I have a PhD in immunology, and we are here to help demystify everything from bench side to bedside.
If you're listening right now, it's either because this has been pre-recorded or you're part of a live studio audience. We are streaming live on
a live
TikTok.
Streaming audience.
This is going to be kind of a catch-all episode where, based on the current audience participation of over 400 people, we will answer your questions that are related to your health from both an immunologist and a clinician's perspective.
Well, two immunologists. You see patients. I do not.
Doesn't mean that we are.
The closest thing I have to patients have been mice.
Meow. So welcome.
The sound effects are courtesy of Dr. Rubin.
Yes, meow now. So what we are going to do is have a bit of our usual kind of banter back and forth about whatever health topic we feel like.
Hi to Scotland. We have a lively audience. Wait, hang on. I just want to shout out to everyone here. Thank you for joining us. This is a lot of fun. It is New Year's Day 2026, and we're having a blast. Hello. To Boston, to Scotland. I saw hello from Liverpool, England. I saw someone from Denver, Colorado earlier.
Washington
All sorts of cool
State.
stuff. Washington State.
Holy cow, folks.
Amazing. Holy cow, folks. Maryland.
Indiana.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Virginia, checking in. Minnesota, northern Minnesota. Keep that coat on. South Florida. Canada. Mississippi, Bolivia, Mexico, New Jersey,
just south of us.
Wales. Oh my God.
Norway.
That's amazing.
Woo. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Lots of Californias. It's my home state. That's where I'm from.
Yeah.
New York, Germany,
Brazil.
Wow. Michigan. Wow. Incredible. Incredible. Georgia. More New Jersey.
Got
St.
some locals
Charles,
here, western burbs of Chicago.
Exactly. Dallas,
wonderful.
Connecticut. Love it. Love it. Love it.
So we are happy that you are all here today.
Yes. Thank you.
Truly.
Arkansas, Oklahoma. I feel like we're just going through all 50 states here.
Alabama, Alaska, Arizona,
Arkansas. Oh. We're only allowed a couple seconds before
now everyone's going to tune out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But seriously, folks, we have been so excited to bring you a podcast that this is going to be recorded and posted. May take a little bit because I'm still learning how to do all this techno stuff. I am pretty tech savvy, but it is an adjustment, and we really want to be able to deep dive into various health related topics, debunking myths and misinformation. There's just been a lot going on in 2025. We've already recorded some episodes that goes over a lot of the myths related to vaccines, autism, thimerosal, aluminum, the ACIP, a lot of different things already. But what we want to do
so much to talk about
is talk about what you want to talk about today is kind of a, what do you want to call it? A potpourri, so to speak?
A potpourri.
A potpourri.
That's just like ask the audience. What do you guys
public
think?
Health.
Of public health. What are you guys thinking? And like, I pride myself on being as scientifically accurate as possible. So I do actually have my laptop here in case we get a question that I am not prepared to answer. I can rapidly interpret papers. I can do all sorts of fun stuff like that. But if I don't have the facts exactly at my fingertips, I prefer to pause. And we may or may not cut it out of the podcast. Prefer to pause, make sure I'm getting all the facts right, and bring them to you guys in real time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The only thing, though, is the biggest rule is we cannot give specific medical advice.
This is not medical advice.
So this is general educational purposes only. So if you have a specific question about your health, it's best to direct it to your own doctor. But if you want to talk about a specific topic, we will do our best to provide you with that valuable information.
Exactly.
So I think one of the best questions to start off with is, what's the best way to deal with the non-science believers, or those who are skeptical of science, anti-vax, etc.?
Well, it's a tough one because there are a lot of reasons why people kind of fall down that conspiracy theory pathway, right? Like, I don't know how you prove to someone who believes the earth is flat that it's round, except you start showing them the science, the data. And the only time I've actually seen that work, there was a documentary on people who believe the earth is flat. And they started to disbelieve this own theory that they had, and they were deep in it. They had t-shirts, they had the annual meetings, their lives revolved around this. When they realized, okay, these are the experiments we would do ourselves to prove if it was round or flat. And they went out and started doing those experiments with like laser leveling, going across a certain number of miles, right? And then their experiments started to show them conclusive data that the earth actually has a curvature to it and it's round. And based on the math and the calculations, it is the size people say it is. And that's when the documentary ends, when they're like, oh, maybe this is right. And so that's a difficult thing to do in medical science, right? Like, I've been doing research for over 25 years. My own hands, my own results. I've published, how do you take people who their last biology class was in high school and they've learned some very basic principles and not all the nuance and immunology. They don't know the difference between an epidemiologist or an immunologist. How do you get them doing their own experiments, right? It's tough.
I will say you have to gauge their willingness to learn. Because if they're not even willing to learn, what's the point? To be honest, I want to make that very clear. We often call that the pre-contemplative stage, where they're not even thinking about changing their minds about whatever it is. You have to wait until they are actually thinking about it,
right?
The contemplative stage, before you can really, truly intervene. Because it's very easy to go to somebody who's in the pre-contemplative phase and try to exert some knowledge and authority into something and end up falling into a trap where you get into an emotional shouting match, figuratively and potentially literally speaking. And it can be very difficult. It's very taxing on mental health. So if you have friends or family that are in that pre-contemplative stage, don't even bother. It's more about if they are curious and want to start to learn about something, then you would say, hey, I know you're very passionate about this and you want to protect so-and-so, whether it's a family member, yourself, loved one, whatever it is. What have you heard about this particular topic? And you get the ideas from them, and then slowly but surely make your way towards explaining what the evidence is and walking them through that. And it doesn't work overnight. You have to take your time and be patient.
Yeah, that can work. I've seen that. I actually had a relative of mine who was saying how masks couldn't work, right? The whole like mosquito with the chain link fence kind of analogy. And he's a very smart man. He's a physicist by training, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, hang on. Did you know that not just one viral particle, which would be the metaphorical mosquito in this example, gets you sick? You need thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, to millions, depending on how infectious that virus is, right? So that means they have to travel pretty large groups and droplets, right?
Yeah.
And there's electrostatic charge on liquid droplets. So masks work because they filter out large groups of electrostatic charge droplets. A lot of viruses, not all, are dead when they dry up. And so if you have that one metaphorical virus particle or a set of small little particles that can make it through this mask, they're effectively dead and or not enough to actually ever make you sick. And so once I started drawing out the math and going through the math with him, because he had a background in mathematics and he understands electrostatic charge, it suddenly clicked. And he turned bright red because he's a smart man and he was so invested in this and bought into it hook, line, and sinker. I'm sure he'd repeated it to a lot of people, and he suddenly realized, oh geez, I was out of my depth in this one particular area. He turned bright red, never wanted to talk about it again, and has not sent me some anti-masks, like propaganda sense. So
and that's a really
it
good
can work.
example. It's a really good example. It's a good story and how really anybody is susceptible to mis and disinformation. So it's really, really important that we all think critically, take our time, double check, ask questions. And the funny thing is that we are constantly being gaslit by the current administration to be told that we're not asking the quote unquote big questions, but only the wellness influencers are. They're the ones asking the big questions.
Yeah.
And they're the ones doing the gold standard science.
The people who have never done a scientific experiment in their life and had it published are the ones suddenly doing the gold standard work. Yeah. Help.
So somebody asked, why is the flu so bad this year? Is it largely due to avoidance of vaccines?
That's part of it.
That is part of it. So the vaccination rates have declined over the past several years. Therefore, more people are susceptible to severe disease. Unfortunately, the current variant of influenza that is circulating,
the most dominant variant. Yeah.
The most dominant one is evading the current vaccines that we have. So while the vaccines are not having the same kind of uptake as we're used to having, more people are getting infected. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily more severe. So the fact that we have more people getting infected means there are more opportunities for people, especially if they're not vaccinated, to have a severe case. And some hospitals are already feeling the full brunt of the force of having this viral respiratory season that we have every year.
Yeah. So let me give some fast facts on all of this. So we used to have 4 variants of influenza that was circulated every year. It hasn't changed very much over the last few years. H1N1, H3N2, those are the 2 dominant variants of influenza A. And then influenza B, there's the Yamagata strain and the Victoria strain. Now, the Yamagata strain has been eliminated because flu does not spread as well as SARS-CoV-2. And you would hear a lot of people who like to spread disinformation going, flu disappeared and they were just mislabeling it as COVID. No, flu disappeared during SARS-CoV-2 for the most part because SARS-CoV-2 spreads better than flu. So everything we are doing to mitigate SARS-CoV-2 spread reduced or stopped influenza spread. So that's why we saw influenza numbers just fall off a cliff. That eliminated the spread of Yamagata B. We actually, with masking, social distancing, and hand washing, got rid of an entire strain of influenza that was largely in circulation to the point where it has not come back for years and we no longer vaccinate for it. So we vaccinate for 3 major strains now, H1N1, H3N2, and Victoria lineage influenza B. H3N2 in Australia's winter season, which is our summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, underwent a series of mutations, and towards the end of August, subclade K arrived of H3N2 with, I think, up to about 12-ish mutations, 9 very serious ones that disrupt the ability of our humoral immune system, which makes antibodies, to recognize the virus. Antibodies are giant proteins that come along and they recognize the virus and they block it from being able to enter your cells.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what stops infection. Okay, now there's 2 branches to the immune system that get activated when you have influenza. Well, there's the innate, but 2 adaptive branches. One is the humoral branch with the antibodies that stop infection. That got mutated around. The other branch is called the cellular immune response, and it goes in and it can recognize snippets of the flu that are smaller. It did not mutate around that recognition. So if you got the vaccine on board, you're protected against H1N1, the Victoria lineage of influenza B, H1N1 influenza A. H3N2, you're not protected from infection, but there is a reduction in severity of disease because that cellular-based immunity that it did not mutate around still got a lot of education through the vaccine. And so this is why symptoms and hospitalization are still reduced. So let me just give the fast facts on that. UK Health Security Agency did a quick study on this, and they showed, and I think Australia's numbers also agreed, that if you have the vaccine on board, if you're an adult, 30 to 40% reduction in hospitalization. For children, 70 to 75% reduction in hospitalization. So it's still a good idea to have this vaccine on board. But because it's mutated around infection, we're seeing a lot more infections, a lot more severe infections. and a lot more spread, because the more infected people you have, the more people spreading the virus.
As a result, and I'm seeing some people chatting about this, and I've seen this too, there are several hospitals now in the United States that are requiring masking again and limiting the number of visitors. And in several parts of the world, because of various constraints, are telling people to stay at home. And that's happening, I know, in the UK, that there's just not enough services to go around right now because many people are sick. Tragically, there was a fire at a club in Switzerland, and they had to divert all their medical attention towards this tragic, traumatic response. And so vaccination is not just a matter of helping yourself, but it's helping the greater community, because reducing your chances of hospitalization helps increase the chance that folks who need the hospital for other reasons would be able to get access to those resources in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Someone asked if I can hula hoop as well as you do. I cannot. I'm not even going to try to pretend. I'm not even going to try to pretend. He is pro level hula hooper over here.
Your phone's falling?
My phone is falling. No, he's excellent in his hula hooping skills.
That's not something I will be doing on
I
this
can
podcast.
do it in heels, though. I don't know. Have you tried?
Let's do it. Let's do it after this. I'll do it. I'll hula hoop in heels.
I don't think we have heels that fit you.
I'll try.
I think we need to go shopping. I can do it backwards in heels, whatever you can do.
I bet you I could do it in heels.
He could probably do it in heels.
I could probably do it in heels one-legged too.
He probably can.
On one foot. Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. You want to put me in a dress and do it too?
No. I mean, if you want it.
Wait. I keep getting tagged in these videos. There's a guy, I think it's in Germany.
Here. I think you can do it.
I can pull it off. But there's a guy, I get tagged in his videos. It's adorable. He wears a dress and heels and hula hoops. And they're like, Dr. Rubin, you're not doing it well enough. You got to do this. Not that I want to, but sometimes I like to prove the haters out there.
Yeah, you could.
There's another video. She won't let me do this, and I'm not going to embarrass her. But there's ones where they show these very fit dudes. Oh, no, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's these very fit dudes who will hula hoop where they put their legs up in the air, or they're like suspended, so to speak, and they're hula hooping and gyrating into the air.
I feel like there's a line.
Exactly. And I respect that line. I will not cross that line.
I don't. Yeah, that one's like dancing, like tap dancing on the line, if you will. I feel like that's like.
I by the way, I can do it, folks. I've done it. I just haven't recorded it.
Really?
I can do it. Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about that later.
Happy New Year, everybody. We hope you're having a great time. Again, this is a live recording that it will be airing later of From Bench to Bedside podcast. I'm Dr. Rubin. And this is Dr. Matthew, my wonderful, wonderful wife, I get to say.
I know.
Who I love very much.
We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary as a married couple. It's very fun.
That's right. We got a lot of exciting things in 2026 in store, including this podcast.
Oh, yeah. We're having a good time with this. It's something that's been in the works for a long time.
Yeah, I remember... It's been over 2 years now. We were talking about doing this. We were like, we're going to do it. But we weren't over in the same place. And then we didn't have a space to do it. And then we had to create the space. And then we had all these things. So finally we said, enough's enough. We're going to do this. And already today we've recorded quite a bit.
Yeah, no, we're having a good time. And I think there's so much going on in the world. We would just be talking, like driving somewhere or like going out to do something. We're like, oh my God. And then this happened and this happened. And like, how are they getting away with saying these things? Right.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's a long time coming because frankly, the administration in the United States is flooding the zone with disinformation. Yeah. And disinformation is a very polite word for lies.
Exactly.
And these people know
lies.
they are lying.
Yeah.
And it's really concerning as a scientist and for my husband as a physician, especially when it shows up in your office with patients, right?
Patients
it's impacting their health directly.
Exactly. And so this podcast will be available wherever you get your podcasts. We just haven't officially posted these episodes yet. We're recording now. We got to edit them. We'll make some announcements. I think to start, we'll probably put a couple up and then we'll just keep posting, regularly is what we're probably going to end up doing. But we want your feedback. This kind of live format for us is meant to get back to our basics and how we do it best, which is just the regular banter that we have back and forth talking about these different issues. And if you want a little spice and something nice at the same time, this is the type of format that I think you'll enjoy. And whether you're commuting to work, you're on the train, you're driving, you're doing some chores around the house, we hope that we can help stimulate some thoughts and discussion, but also a few laughs along the way.
Absolutely. And as you said at the beginning, this is kind of just a potpourri of health questions and information because we're doing this live. And I saw a fun question go by that I know you have a good answer to. So what is sun sneezing? And actually, can it run in families?
Oh, yeah. So you can have what looks like an allergic reaction to the sun by sneezing, but it's not technically an allergy based on what we know. So if you go outside or get exposed to a bright light, there is a neurological reflex that can cause you to sneeze. It's often referred to as sun sneezing, photic sneezing, and it can also be inherited. There is a syndrome, let's see if I can get this right again, autosomal compelling helioophthalmic outburst syndrome, or ACHOO syndrome. Autosomal dominant. Helioophthalmic. Ophthalmic.
So sun, eyes, outburst
syndrome. Or ACHOO syndrome.
So the sun to your
autosomal
eyes
dominant,
and then have an outburst. Autosomal dominant, meaning
outburst.
that it is, if the gene, one of your parents has the gene, all the siblings will have it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So there's an account on social media that I had stitched recently where this mom is taking videos of her baby, and anytime the baby gets exposed to the sun, is sneezing. And it's adorable. I will not doubt that. But there's a small occupational risk to this, which is if you're sneezing a lot when you're driving, it may impact your sight, because when you sneeze, you often close your eyes and it can be distracting.
Yeah.
So I always tell folks if they experience this to wear sunglasses to try to reduce the amount.
Help?
It can potentially. Okay. Sometimes in rare instances, medication may be needed for something like this.
Okay. Well, we know Trump doesn't have that.
No, because he looked at the eclipse without any protection, which was really, really not a good idea. Now, this is a common question that's asked, which is using an iodine nasal spray to prevent illness.
Ah, yes.
Personally, I am not a fan. Mainly because
tell us why.
The reason is, and this is true of a lot of like the wellness industry, certainly there may be benefit to a lot of these interventions, but if it's not properly safety tested, unlike what the current administration tries to make you think with vaccines, which is not true, we don't have proper safety testing for iodine nasal sprays in the same way. And so we are going off of potential theoretical risks, which especially for children, if you're exposing them to iodine nasally, it does potentially get systemically absorbed. It could shut down your thyroid gland. Because if you have too much iodine in your body, there is actually a reaction that occurs where the thyroid gland kind of shuts down to protect itself, and then you stop making thyroid hormone, and you can have a relative state of thyroid dysfunction.
So maybe not for kids, but just saline nasal rinses work great for kids, right?
Correct.
We were talking about that earlier.
But true for anybody. There is some research to suggest that if you're rinsing your nose while you're sick multiple times a day, you could potentially reduce the severity and duration of illness for an upper respiratory infection. There is actually data to support that. There's
some pretty good data, papers throughout the years. I think I just saw, it's either 2019 or 2016, I can't remember, out of the Nature Family Journals. There was a paper on that. And I think one person just asked a really interesting question. I don't know if you have a take on this, but they said they are entering menopause or they're menopausal and they've developed new allergies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is something that I think in a future book I would love to potentially write about, which is the science of allergy, especially when it comes to hormones and especially for women's health, because there are specific time points in a female's life when it's puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, where there can be significant fluctuations in estrogen that can directly impact the immune system. And so that's often correlated with development of not just autoimmune diseases, but allergy as well. And I see this a lot in my clinic where women come in and they're developing food allergies in their 40s and 50s.
So this is a common thing.
And I have to look more into the literature to see what else has been studied on this. But it is definitely an observation that I see in my clinical practice, which I personally believe, hypothesis driven again, that this has to do with estrogen.
I would believe that's true. And based on my understanding of the immune system, so you guys need to understand that the modern understanding of immunology is really only about, I would even call it like 10, 15 years old tops.
If that. Yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
And so one thing among others, and I want to use this to launch into something else I'd like to talk about, is that immune cells respond to a lot of hormones. They have hormone receptors. So there are estrogen receptors right on your immune cells. Estrogen impacts your immune cells directly. Testosterone, etc. There are also neurotransmitter receptors on immune cells. So serotonin, dopamine, some immune cells even make dopamine. Okay. And so it's really fascinating, this nexus between hormones and neuroimmunology. And this is a new field. It's an emerging field. I think I wrote about it, I want to say, gosh, now 6 or 7 years ago, saying the next frontier of immunology is neuroimmunology.
Yes.
And something that has come to light very rapidly because so many people are on the GLP-1 shots right now, which is great. It's improving everyone's health, is that there are often off-target effects, and I don't want to call them side effects because many times they seem to be beneficial beyond just loss of weight. There's a creator on here that I'm mutuals with who was talking about how her arthritis seemed to disappear while she was in GLP-1s.
Yeah.
The immune system responds to this hormone. Arthritis can be immune inflammation driven.
Right.
And so I think we're going to be learning a lot about this in the future. It's very interesting.
I'm going to give a couple of examples on how your hormones can impact your immune system in specific diseases. So one of the ones that I see very commonly affects about 1% of the population in the United States. So that's over 3 million people. So that's a lot of people. Is something called chronic spontaneous urticaria. What that means is you're having hives more days than not for at least 6 weeks or more.
Right.
And the underlying cause is not well understood. That's why we call it spontaneous, because it's just happening.
Spontaneous. Yeah.
And so the cells that are primarily responsible for this in your immune system are mast cells and basophils, but there are a lot more mast cells in your immune system that are circulating than basophils. So we usually just talk about mast cell activation. And so a lot of folks are told, yeah, this is in your head. You get these stress hives, things like that.
I hate that. That's the worst thing for anyone to say.
It is, but
that should be stricken from the medical language. You never tell a patient it's just in your head.
But here's the thing, though. When you are stressed, there is a hormonal response that directly activates your immune system. So when you are releasing cortisol in the stress response, one of the precursor hormones to have that process happen that's released from your hypothalamus is called CRH, or corticotropin releasing hormone. There are receptors on your mast cells that will activate if that hormone binds to the mast cell. So when you are stressed and you get hives, that is part of that response. So it's not, you don't want to call it in your head, but the reality is that it is a hormonally driven response that occurs during times of emotional stress. So there is a pathway that is there.
So there is a link
that is real
to stress and emotions, but you can't, like, the symptoms themselves and the outcome aren't in someone's head.
They're organic and they're real.
Yeah, they're
That's
organic and they're real.
They're real.
Yes. So someone just asked a question, so let's clarify. So GLP-1s are documented to help with autoimmune disease, or are you just seeing a correlation? There are a lot of one-off reports that need to be investigated further because there is a potential mechanism there that would be scientifically sound.
Another example that a lot of people ask about is, why is it that men tend to be...
So it's a possibility is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another interesting one, which I see on social media quite a bit, is why is it that men essentially wither away when they get a fever compared to women. Oh my gosh, I can't handle this. This is too much.
Oh gosh.
And there's a social construct to that for sure, but there's also a hormonal and immunological basis.
You're going to get me in trouble with this because I made a post many years ago and I actually got a lot of flack for this.
Man cold, man flu.
Right, because I debunked the concept of man cold or man flu, and everyone's like, "Stop sticking up for my husband! Don't let him see this video. This is not. I'm not here, laughter, for you to help. Laughter and light is my handle on TikTok. For you to help my husband and complain at me more, and so. But you guys do like there is back to the concept of hormones and the immune response. Men do have really nasty responses to viral illness.
Yes.
They're stronger interferon gamma, which is inflammatory, IL-1 driven, IL-6 driven hormone immune responses. And so men typically have what's called a Th type 1 response.
Right.
And so it's more inflammatory. Whereas women have a less inflammatory immune response typically, and this is due to estrogen. And so anyone who has a higher level of estrogen versus testosterone will have a more Th2-driven response, which is typically not as high of a fever, not quite the same level of muscle aches and body aches, but inflammatory in different ways. And this is why estrogen is typically associated with autoimmune disease. So the rate of people who have a lot of estrogen in their system versus not, more testosterone, getting autoimmune disease is much higher, but we also don't have as severe symptoms when we're sick. Now, not saying that your symptoms aren't severe if you're a woman, but
comparatively
speaking. And this is, probably why a lot of the deaths from SARS-CoV-2, which was a massive inflammatory viral response, it was higher in men. And then women are a little more likely to end up with long COVID.
Exactly. And so a lot of folks are now, asking about menopause and what is really happening there. So again, the changes, I find that the changes in the hormones in general is associated with changes in the immune responses, which may, and I'm using my language carefully because it's an evolving field.
This is an evolving field.
Exactly.
So be thoughtful on this. We're giving you kind of our hypotheses around this based on the knowledge we have.
Yeah. That the changes end up leading to potentially more allergic or autoimmune diseases. Circling this to something that I see quite a bit now in my practice is mast cell activation syndrome, is this concept that you have these mast cells that are twitchy. They're hyper responsive to seemingly benign stimuli.
They're just like on guard, like they're ready to go.
They're just doing it way too much to benign stimuli, and it leads to multi-systemic severe recurrent symptoms. So like having flushing on and off, having severe diarrhea after eating, having some palpitations, because mast cells are in all of your connective tissues, so they're everywhere. So they can seemingly create a whole multitude of symptoms. Now, what I'm trying to get at is that some of my mast cell patients who are female, they have cyclical problems, depending on where they are in their menstrual cycle, that they will cyclically have worsening symptoms that come and go, come and go, come and go. It's also related to something called progesterone hypersensitivity, where the changes in progesterone are believed to create severe rashes, as an example, or anaphylactoid type reactions. It's rare, but it is real and it can happen. I've seen some cases of the localized issues with this.
Interesting. Yeah. There's so much to kind of get our arms around in how we I guess use the immune system or alter the way the immune system functions gently, carefully, to start to address these diseases truly at their root cause. That's another
that buzzword. For a second I was like, wait a second, hold on.
It's a very highly abused term by the current administration.
Yeah, they're just
as if doctors don't go to the root cause.
Because apparently they've never heard of the term pathophysiology, which is root cause.
Yeah. Pathophysiology is my favorite area. I want to know the why, the how, the mechanisms. Because then you can like kind of start to tease apart the threads and pull in things that really make a meaningful difference for people.
I gotta say, I loved my medical school training because it was moving away from traditional medical education where it used to be it was like you have your anatomy class.
It's a mast. M-A-S-T, like a mast on a ship.
Okay, so we went away from, our medical school went away from the traditional, you have your course on anatomy, your course on physiology, your course on biochemistry, your course on pathology. What we did was every single system, we did everything at the same time. So you were learning about the normal physiology and how it could go wrong in the pathophysiology at the same time. And looking at the cells under the microscope and looking at the gross anatomy. It was all put together in a systems-based approach. So you had a more holistic way of thinking about the patients.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see what we've got. Someone said which med school?
I went to Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio.
That's pretty typical, though, for most med school
educations. Now it is.
Now it is.
We were one of the first to do it this way.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Is MCAS linked to multiple miscarriage? I do not know that off the top of my head, but I would not rule it out because there is an immune response component to multiple miscarriage. So I would have to look into that and see if there are any studies there. Thoughts on epigenetics and immunology? I certainly do believe that epigenetics influences immune responses. In fact, there is good evidence for this. Multiple miscarriage and MCAS, or mast cell issues. My research-based opinion on that is that that is likely possible because there are autoimmune or immune cell components to multiple miscarriage.
Yeah, the problem is that there's just not enough studied on it to really give you well-informed opinion on it. One of the challenges with it is getting a good cohort of patients where they fulfill the diagnostic criteria and then enrolling them in a study, which is very expensive, to then go through and look at all these issues. So that is a huge challenge in order to get a better understanding of this. So it ends up kind of becoming piecemeal where everybody's kind of doing their own thing to try to help people as much as possible. And I am very hopeful with some certain recent developments for MCAS that there's going to be some better things out there. And part of that also has to do with the fact that there's overlap between that and long COVID. And there is actually still a pretty strong interest in doing research and funding for it, which is good, but we need more.
Yeah, agreed. And the United States, for a very long time, has had the largest research funding system in the world, National Institute of Health, which has several subdivisions that then distribute, NCI is one of them, National Cancer Institute, is under the National Institute of Health umbrella. And that budget is distributed out to researchers, primarily in the United States. Sometimes they collaborate with groups overseas, and really has driven, the crowning achievement that has been United States research into health and medicine. But with the funding cuts, with the budget cuts, with the denials of grants, this is all shifting very rapidly. And so, yes, these areas are desperate for more research. There may be a there, but we're currently not funding it, and funding is definitely on shaky ground in a lot of these areas.
Right.
Let's see, what have we got here? What defines an allergy? And I'm going to expand on that question and say versus food sensitivity.
Okay. Allergy by itself is a much more broad term than talking about food sensitivity. So I'm going to kind of parse into multiple issues here. So allergy is the study of the abnormal immune response to foreign substances, something that is not inherent to the body usually. And there's some exceptions to this. Like I mentioned before, progesterone hypersensitivity is kind of still technically thought of as an allergy, but the issue is that when you have something in the environment that is seemingly benign, but your immune system has this response where it's a little bit hypersensitive to it, like pollen or food, it can lead to the immune system responding, and it can create unpleasant side effects.
The immune system has decided it looks like something it should fight. It looks like a foreign invader that could do you some harm.
It doesn't mean your immune system's weak. It's confused. That's the better way to think about it. But the problem is popular culture tends to group folks who have asthma and allergies as being weak or meek, when that's not really what's happening. The immune system is more jacked, if anything. And that can create its own
I just envisioned a jacked immune system.
Is the issue. So there are different types of abnormal immune responses. There are different hypersensitivity reactions. We often call them gel and Coombs. As an example, the classic one that everyone talks about is type 1. That's the one that you get a blood test or a skin test to see if you have a circulating antibody called immunoglobulin E, or IgE for short. Now, do you know why it's called IgE?
IgE.
Yeah. What are the history behind that?
So E in the immune system is often eosin.
It's not anything to do with that, actually.
What is it?
So I learned this for my book that's coming out all about allergies.
Epsilon? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. It is not epsilon.
It's not epsilon.
It's erythema.
Erythema.
So when they were doing skin tests
as
initially,
an immunologist, I feel like I should know this, but I can picture what IgE looks like in my head.
Of course. But before they really even had the structure of IgE mapped out, the E came from the fact that when you did skin testing, it created redness or erythema.
Erythema. Interesting.
Which makes sense, because when you do a skin test and you get these IgE antibodies that are specific to the substance binding to your mast cells and the antigen, releasing histamine, it creates a wheal and flare, the swelling and the redness that you get. So it actually makes quite a bit of sense. That's your type 1 hypersensitivity. It's an immediate reaction that happens. Versus if you have contact dermatitis from poison ivy or from nickel, as an example, that's a delayed reaction mediated usually by T cells. So we call that a type 4 hypersensitivity reaction. DTH. Versus, and all of those are well mapped out, well-defined pathways. A sensitivity, when you hear that term, is non-specific. It means that we don't know what's going on, but there's something there that may be causing symptoms, but we have no testing that's reliable to figure it out. And so doing elimination and adding it back in to kind of challenge your immune system, to challenge your body, might help, but there's really no proper testing. If you see a test that says online, oh, we're going to do a food sensitivity test, that is not based in validated, evidence-based practice. It is not helpful for the vast majority of people.
And unfortunately, a lot of people will spend hundreds of dollars on this and they'll get a result. They'll send you something for sure, but it's not something that is likely to be accurate, clinically actionable, or even to really help you in the long run. It can cause some harm too. If you get some random result back that says you were sensitive to everything, and so you have to limit you go by that result and start limiting your diet, you can end up being nutrient deficient and for no good reason. You've paid a lot of money for something that's not clinically actionable.
Right. Now, IgE levels, when we test for them in the blood, they can be in the double digits or triple digits. I mean, you can even have it in the thousands, and it basically means that you have allergies. But there then becomes a point where if it's getting into the tens of thousands, then you start worrying about something called hyper IgE syndrome, and you might end up being susceptible to infections from a genetic standpoint. Sometimes it's called Job syndrome. That's what it used to be called, at least. Now it's hyper IgE syndrome. I haven't seen a case of that in about 10 years.
Interesting. It's particularly rare.
It's pretty rare. Usually you see it in academic centers. You don't really see it in the community setting.
Yeah. And just because you have IgE that's responsive to something doesn't necessarily mean that you are sensitive to it. It just means your immune system recognizes it. The funny thing about our immune system is it will recognize things and then it will decide either, okay, that's fine. I recognize that. You've had this avocado or coffee before and I will make IgE to it, but it's not something I need to worry about. It's tolerized. It doesn't really care.
Yeah, the adage we talk about in medicine is sensitization does not mean allergy. So when you have the antibody, you are sensitized. Allergic means you're having clinical symptoms as a result of it. And there's many reasons why your immune system may not actively respond. The classic example I like to tell people, because I think it makes the most sense conceptually and simplified, is that let's say you are sensitized to soy, but you eat it every day and you don't react. Well, it could be that your immune system never sees it because by the time you have digested it, it's not the same protein that the antibody is reacting to. So that's one possibility, but there are other potential reasons.
Yeah. And often cooking things changes your sensitivity level, right?
Correct. It depends on the food, but yes, that could change it. Oh, this is a good question. If randomized controlled trials exclude people with chronic illness, how can they fully measure vaccine safety?
So, interesting and important question. Do you want to take it to start or?
Yeah, I do actually. So when we talk about vaccine safety, we talk about clinical trials. There are multiple clinical trials that are done before it gets licensed and recommended and approved by the FDA and CDC. So you have your phase 1 study that's looking at the general safety of it in a small population. And then your phase 2 and 3.
Small and healthy, generally healthy.
Generally healthy, depending.
No complicating factors population.
Right.
Like if we put this in most people, it's going to go well.
Phases 2 and 3 look more at effectiveness, in a smaller and larger scale, respectively. And after multiple phase 3 trials, then the FDA may say, okay, we're going to approve this. But you may not realize there's something called phase 4, which is your post-marketing research and studies where there's active surveillance on what is going on. Just because something gets approved doesn't mean they just stop looking at it. It's constantly being surveilled, especially for vaccines. And so that is where a lot of the bulk of the safety ends up being monitored for the general population, including those who may have been ruled out of the initial studies. So especially when it comes to vaccines where there are multiple safety databases and there's passive surveillance, there's active surveillance going on, these are issues that are constantly being monitored that can then be applicable to patients. And when we have decades of research on how vaccines work, we can take that decades of knowledge and individually apply it to people. Because while we say in the public that vaccines are safe and effective, not everybody can get vaccines for a whole host of reasons. As an example, certain immune compromised states, you can't get live attenuated vaccines, as an example. And so we don't universally recommend vaccines for everybody, no matter what. Wellness influencers, anti-vaxxers will make it seem like you are mandated, you are compelled to do this all the time. That's not the reality of what this is. When the CDC recommends vaccination schedule, it's there for insurance purposes and to help streamline care and conversations. But it doesn't mean that informed consent doesn't actually happen. There are certainly risks for any medical intervention. And when it comes to a population where they've got certain medical comorbidities, we may think twice about using a vaccine in those cases.
Yeah, and they're usually like very specific medical comorbidities. And like you said, nothing is risk-free or side effect-free. No intervention is. Vaccines, though, protect from viruses that have tremendous side effects and risks, far more than just getting the vaccine. And I will say from a physiologic standpoint, an immunological standpoint, we understand how vaccines work really well, better than a lot of long-term small molecule or antibody-based therapeutics. Vaccines are kind of a short course training system for an immune response. And so we know that the part of the virus that educates the immune system is in there. You have a little bit of stimulus, an adjuvant to activate the immune system to say, hey, look at this. This is something you should pay attention to. And then it's out of your system. It is a short course training system for your immune response. Now, we know very well that some people who are chronically immunocompromised can't handle that well, have other extenuating circumstances around immune responses, won't do well. And let me give an example for this. So during the SARS-CoV-2 peak of the pandemic and everyone was getting vaccinated, there are a lot of people out there on an antibody called rituximab. that knocks down all of the B cells. B cells are responsible for making antibodies. And there are physicians out there who looked at their patient, analyzed what was going on, and said, hey, if you get this vaccine, you're not going to have a response that's useful to you. Let me titrate you off the rituximab. You can get your vaccine, and then you can go back on it because it's not impacting the memory B cells after they've responded to the vaccine.
Right, exactly.
And so there are ways that, we understand how vaccines work really well. We understand how a lot of other therapeutics work really well. And so that knowledge is pretty well used by physicians, right, to tailor vaccine programs to them.
Right.
I saw a cool question. I'm trying to remember what it was. It just came through.
It's the only problem with doing the live without being able to touch it.
Yeah, without being able to scroll back.
Yeah.
What was that question?
So feel free to rewrite your questions. That's okay. We just want to make sure that we're able to get through as much as possible. We've already been talking for quite a bit. I'm really happy.
It's a lot of fun.
I'm having a lot of fun with this format.
Yeah. I love chit-chatting in lives, and I'm happy we're recording it because we've done so many lives where I think we get a lot of good information out there.
Yeah.
People ask phenomenal questions I think would be so helpful for other people to hear the answers to.
We used to do this multiple times a week. Do you remember those days?
We would.
I love that so much.
That was so fun.
Yeah. And many of you have been there throughout this. And so whether you are just joining us now for the first time or you've been a long-time follower and fan, we are so happy that you're here with us. Again, this is the Bench to Bedside podcast live recording edition that is live streaming right now. I'm Dr. Zachary Rubin.
I'm Dr. Melanie Matthews. So I have a PhD. I'm a research scientist by training. I've done a lot of the experiments I talk about with my own two hands. I have a decent publication record.
I've published a little bit too. Yeah. I
may go back to academia at some point. I do miss it, I have to admit. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And yes, I am Dr. Rubin's wife. Someone asked that question.
And there's some folks here who have been here since the first day. That's awesome.
Some people who have followed both of us for very long years. Oh, what's the podcast called? Yes, important. From Bench to Bedside.
Which makes sense because we have a scientist and a physician.
Yes. So I would be the bench scientist.
I'm the bedside.
You'd be the bedside. And so you'll often hear us talk about or answer the same question from different perspectives. And that's what the podcast is meant to capture, the scientific basis for something and understanding the perspective of a research scientist and then the perspective of a physician who you would interface with or talk to in a clinic.
Yeah. So somebody said, what are my views on Dr. Oz? Well, recently I made a video. I was very critical of him because he was talking about how the influenza vaccine was not effective and it's controversial, but in the same breath was saying you should take zinc, vitamin D, eat food where it came from, getting sunlight and exercising, which those aren't even the supportive care measures I would recommend.
Yeah. And listen, neither one of us are against making sure that you have sufficient nutrients.
Of course. Well-balanced diet is so important.
Living in the Northern Hemisphere in the winter, chances are you might go a little low on your vitamin D. If your doctor says hey, take some vitamin D, you're low. And granted, our food is pretty supplemented up here in the United States with vitamin D. Our milks, our cereals.
Exactly.
A lot of things you buy has vitamin D added.
Right.
And that reduced childhood rickets. Children used to have bone development defects in the United States before we started vitamin D supplementation. I'm never going to say avoid supplements that you need, right? I'm never going to say avoid exercise. Exercise is great. Getting sunlight is great. Eating fruits and vegetables is great. Does that stop a virus from infecting you, killing you, or sending you to the hospital? No. Sorry. The comment section just lit up at the mention of Dr. Oz.
Yeah.
And he's a real problem. He's telling people you're going to be just fine with a nasty influenza case. Did he even recommend vaccination?
No, he said, well, you know, the flu vaccine doesn't work, but it's kind of controversial, but blah, blah, blah. Go eat food from where it came from. It's like, what?
This is not
Does it mean
controversial.
that you dig up carrots from the ground?
Science. We understand the science.
Yeah.
It is not controversial.
Yeah.
They want it to be controversial because that's how they remain relevant. Because they're not doing real research otherwise.
Yeah.
They're really not.
He became famous from Oprah and then ended up selling a bunch of supplements on TV, including some kind of green coffee extract that
yeah, and here's the other thing.
It's rejuvenating.
I love the idea of doctors spreading important medical and health advice through national TV outlets. I think that's phenomenal. I think we should have good physicians doing that, but not at the expense of public health when they start becoming corrupted by these movements and they move away from evidence-based practice.
Exactly.
And best recommendations. It's a travesty when that happens because someone who's gone through medical school, dedicated their life to this, they suddenly start making trade-offs for, I can only imagine, financial reasons, and saying more and more outrageous things. And how many houses does Dr. Oz have? I think it came out when he was running for office in Pennsylvania. Multiple homes, multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
How?
At the expense of...
At the expense of people's health and selling supplements that are unproven.
Yeah.
In fact, I think when that happens, you need to walk away from your medical license. It corrupts the field of medicine and science.
It's rather unfortunate.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then that's also part of the issue with when it comes to trust in doctors and nurses, that you have, you know, a small number of bad actors that makes it harder for everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah. Harder and dangerous for patients, right?
Exactly.
It's dangerous. You know, how many people take this advice and end up sicker? I'll never forget. Can I tell a personal anecdote? I was working in a hospital as an undergraduate because I couldn't decide if I wanted to go into graduate school and do research or go into medicine. And so I worked in a few different laboratories. I also worked in a hospital for 3.5 years, or 2.5 years rather. And I worked in a radiology department. I did patient transport. Great undergraduate job. I had my little pager, got paged when they needed transport. But I would also often hang out with the radiology residents in the reading room. It was a big dark room with all the x-rays and the CAT scans. And, you know, sometimes I'd hang out in the cath lab, got to see some cool procedures. But I remember this one resident I was friends with absolutely losing his mind. And I'm not going to break HIPAA and say what happened, but let's just say this woman had a tumor. And he was in tears. First, he went through all the stages of grief right there in the reading room. Tears, disbelief, anger for about an hour before he had to go tell this patient what he read. Because she had a tumor. It was like a stage 1, whatever, stage 1.5, 2. And she read a book that was popular at the time called The Blood Type Diet. And she said, I'm going to refuse treatment. And I am going to do what this book says and eat based on this blood type diet. She came back with like stage 3 or stage 4, I forget. It was aggressive, metastatic throughout her body within months.
Oh, wow.
He was in tears.
Oh, boy.
Because it went from, I could have saved this woman's life and her family. Like, she was there with her husband. She had kids, you know, who were still growing up. I could have saved this woman's life. She read this blood type diet book and she is now going to die. And I have to go deliver this news to her and her husband. And I watched this resident lose his mind. Everyone was upset.
Yeah.
And this is the cost of what happens when these people walk away from their medical license, walk away from evidence-based science to make a buck. It's horrific.
Yeah. That's really, really sad.
And it's real. This is the real cost of that.
And there are countless stories like this, unfortunately. It really, really bothers me. You know, like, I'm going to put myself in a soapbox here for a second because...
Yes, please.
So many of you know that I have a book coming out and I'm extremely excited about it. It is, for me, like a crowning achievement to be able to do this. My wife is the reason why it's going through because I originally was not going to do it. but
So
she was
funny.
like, I'm going to write it for you if you don't do this. So
Well, it was a gentle nudge, but also a
no,
real
it was
offer.
not just
I
a
was
gentle.
like,
No.
I'm going to start ghostwriting your book
She
for
said
you.
this not once,
Yeah.
not twice, but like 10 times.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm glad that I did, especially after, finding out that Marty McCary has a book in the same class, like Amazon category of food allergies. It's like, why does a surgeon, but he's not an allergist or an immunologist, because he has a book where he basically goes through all these different scenarios, blaming doctors for making blatant errors in medicine. Because he got famous, by the way, for those who don't know, he got famous because he claimed that the third leading cause of death in the United States is medical error. His whole platform, his fame came from blaming doctors for problems. And he was wildly overreaching when he said that. But then this book, which is still ahead in the Amazon rankings oftentimes, I know mine hasn't come out yet, so it's going to be a little different when it comes out. But if you pre-order, we can help get it above McCary's nonsense of blaming doctors for causing the peanut allergy epidemic. Grift is still selling. And yes, he's the FDA commissioner. But I put my heart and soul into this book with hundreds of citations in this. Evidence-based, current up-to-date literature with nuance, with patient stories, analogies to make this easily understandable, and telling you what we know and what we don't know. And so to be able to have this come to the forefront would be such an honor and such a privilege, but also just to help people to really get an appreciation and understanding of your health. And even if you don't have allergic diseases, you may know somebody, or it'll help you take charge of your health, because it gives you a lot of resources for figuring out how do you navigate healthcare. So I'm really proud of what I've put into it, and I can't wait for you to read it.
Yeah, I definitely did threaten to ghostwrite it for him if he didn't start writing. I wasn't threatening. It was actually real. I was like, all right.
No. She was actually going to do it.
Some research.
I get to say the same thing for her.
Oh my God, I know. I'm a little behind in where I intended to be with some writing. I will let you guys know, but it's going to be a primer on how our immune systems basically rule everything. I think people don't appreciate our immune system there's so many different ways to think about it. I like to think about it as almost like it can be considered a sixth sense.
Yeah.
So often before you get sick, let me describe what I mean by that. Sick with almost any illness, people will have an emotional response to and they don't know why. Their mood will be off. Something will, right before you get really sick with a cold, a lot of people or flu, people recognize certain symptoms in themselves. I kind of panic and I start cleaning. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, that is true.
No, and some people have this overwhelming sense of dread and they can't shake it and they don't know what's wrong. That is your immune system telling your nervous system something's about to go down, right? And that is kind of a fascinating thing. I also like to think about it as almost a distributed nervous system, because it is just as complex, if not more, than the human brain. But we don't think of it that way. And it's fascinating. But it'll be mostly focused on autoimmune disease and how the human immune system works and some of the mysteries, what we've learned over time, and kind of some of the mysteries we're uncovering still. Are you familiar with pandas? You are.
I am familiar with it. The issue is it's still an evolving issue. That's true of a lot of things that we deal with in medicine. So it's this idea that a child gets a strep infection, ends up having this kind of neuroinflammatory response that leads to a significant regression in developmental milestones, behavior, cognition, basically autism-like behaviors, which are thought to be blamed on a strep infection. This is not something that's in my clinical practice, but it is something that is being studied actively to see what are the merits of what's going on, or if this is just a hypothesis. It's hard for me to say because it's not something that I encounter on a regular basis.
Biologics and asthma. You have a few biologics you use, right?
I do. So when we talk about biologics as a class of medication, I like to tell people that it's basically antibodies that are grown in a lab, that are purified, that are meant to target a very specific part of the immune system to shut that little part down, almost as if you're getting like a rheostat button and just winding it down to turn off a specific light. So there are different pathways that your immune system are activated when you have asthma. So it could be an allergic pathway, eosinophilic pathway as an example. And these biologic medications using an antibody, it's a large protein tag, it will latch onto a specific part of the immune system and turn that pathway down or turn it off to help decrease the inflammation and hypersensitive reactions that happen in the airways. So there are multiple medications that can be potentially used. It's something that you have to talk with your doctor about to learn more, but anybody who has what's considered to be moderate to severe persistent asthma, not responsive to conventional therapies like controller inhalers, could be eligible for this biologic type medication that could be potentially life-changing in a positive way. But which one and for what person is really a discussion that should be made with your doctor.
Absolutely. This is a fun way to record a podcast. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and asking us such awesome questions. Do you have any New Year's resolutions, babe? I don't know if we have any.
I do, actually. We talked about this briefly yesterday.
Did we?
I want to focus on my physical health a little bit more.
Yes.
This past year, we did so many projects around the house, so many mentally taxing things that
we just did a lot.
So just to recap, we moved my wife in to this house cross country with 2 dogs. Now we have 3 dogs. This whole room was redone. We redid our deck. We redid our patio. We got a new tub. We changed out some carpeting. We built a dog room for our dogs.
I'm not allowed to send Dr. Rubin DIY videos anymore. That's how bad it got.
She's banned. Because
not for at least another 6 months, right?
12.
12.
This year is not about DIYs. It's about physical and mental health. Too much has been going on. We're, writing books. I'm actually writing my 2nd book.
Yes, you are.
And you are starting
I'm writing
your first.
My first.
She's working on her work. I have a full-time clinic.
We both have full-time jobs.
We have full-time jobs on top of this.
Yeah.
So we're very much like we get home and we're just like, oh, hey, how's it going? We'll cuddle and then we're reading while we're cuddling and talking about the world and then doing our work.
Oh my gosh. It's pretty nonstop.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we to be fair, we do get out.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. We work hard and we play hard. We had a wonderful trip recently. We've actually taken several trips this year for different work purposes too. Speaking at conferences, we were in Santa Barbara for her alma mater. We were in Vancouver. We were in DC. We did a lot of traveling this year too.
I've met some really lovely, lovely people this year.
Yeah.
It's been phenomenal.
It's really been an amazing year. And 2026, I think, will get brighter. And I think we're building this community here with this podcast that we're getting off the ground. I am truly excited about the months ahead.
Me too. I think there's a lot we can do to expand our reach, to help people understand real science and real medicine and not get bamboozled by people who are very good at confusing the topics and making a giant kerfuffle around things that actually aren't problematic.
Right.
Just so they can get more attention. These are TV doctors and lawyers is what we're up against. And this is their livelihood. And they're going to fight hard for it. They're going to use, a lot of them publish papers using AI constantly to try to give themselves credibility. They're easily debunked, but they work very hard to flood the zone with so much garbage that is so detrimental to people's health that, it just leaves people feeling like there is something there.
Right.
When it's obviously garbage.
So again, thank you so much for being with us today for our first live recording of Bench to Bedside podcast. I'm Dr. Zachary Rubin.
And I'm Dr. Melanie Matthew.
We can't wait to talk to you soon.
See you soon.
Thanks for joining us on From Bench to Bedside podcast. We're thrilled to have you here as we explore the intersection of science and medicine. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes where we'll dive deeper into health topics that matter. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.